All right, so this video is designed to help review over some key concepts that you'll see on the test this Wednesday. On the test, it's very important that you really pay attention to what exactly it is the question is asking for. So I did do some bolding, but I'll go over it with you. So there are going to be some questions where you are going to have to choose a graph as the answer choice. So this is the same as finding the unit rate, which is finding a graph that has the same slope to the slope that you're given. So in this case, this is the case when you only find one pretty point or one clear point or pretty point, whatever you want to call it, and you see if it matches the proportion that they give you. So they're telling us which graph represents a slope that represents a rate of 800 kilometers. So, for instance, 800 kilos in 16 hours. So, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to reduce this, or before you even reduce, what you can do is find a pretty point on each graph that's given to you. So this graph might be answer choice A, there might be another graph for answer choice B, and so on. So what you're going to do, this is the point where you go to each pretty point and see if it matches the rate that it gives you. So this is when you're seeing if it equals the pretty point that it gives you. So for example, let's take a look at this pretty point. So for example, this pretty point tells us the distance in kilometers. Make sure you pay attention to your axes. So 50, they're telling us that 50 kilometers, so I'm going to write 50 kilos. So this is when you see if it matches, if it reduces to the same number. So 50 in 1 hour. So that means we need to type 800 divided by 16 and see if it matches 50 divided by 1. So basically, we need to see if it has the same slope as 50. So I'm just going to punch that in on the calculator. So 800 divided by 16. My calculator doesn't want to work. So 800 divided by 16, I get 50. So that reduces to 50. Well, so does 50 divided by 1. So that means this graph would be a match. So you would choose this graph right here. So this is the type of question where you're going to have multiple graphs and you have to choose which graph has the same slope or the same proportion of what's given to you in the word problem. So 800 to 16. So 800 to 16, I set up the proportion and found which pretty point matches that slope. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This one says, based on the table, how much money was earned per stock? Now, again, this is another version where you want to pay attention to exactly what it's asking for. Now, I know you see a table and you want to quickly come in here, find the difference, and write that in, change in y divided by change in x. But this is not what that question is asking. It's not asking for slope, it's not asking for y-intercept. So you only do that when it asks for slope or y-intercept. However, they're asking for how much money was earned, amount earned, per stock. So that means they want to know how much money was earned in one stock. So what I will have to do is, that's what we're looking for. How much money in one stock. So in this case, it's just going to be a proportion. So we'll set up a proportion for what we know. So we know in 1.85 stocks, we earn $25.50. What we're looking for is how much money earned. So we're looking for money. I'm gonna put my variable in the money. Remember, keep your labels in the same row. So anything that I associate with stocks is going to go up here. Anything I associate with money is going to go down here. All right, so we're looking for money in one stock. So I'm going to write one stock. So cross multiply and divide 25.50 times 1 divided by 1.85. So I'm going to put that in the calculator. So 25.50, we know 25.50 times 1 is itself. So this is that baseball bat and ball method. So 25.50 divided by 1.85. And we get roughly $13.78. So that's how you're going to do this question. So be very careful. You got to ask yourself, okay, is it asking for slope or y-intercept? In that case, then you're going to do the change in y divided by change in x. But we're not doing that this time because they just want to know a unit rate for number of stalks. So be very careful what the question is asking for. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, so in this case, yes, they are asking what is the slope, what is the y-intercept. So now we're going to do change in y divided by change in x. So first, let's start with the slope. So we're going to do slope first. So slope is the change in y divided by change in x. So that means change in, remember. So change in y is going to be my numerator. So I'm going to look at the y column first. I'm going to work with these 4 numbers right here. I'm going to calculate the difference from 1.55 to 1.35. Now we already know we're subtracting because going from 1.55 to 1.35, we're taking away. So I'm going to find that difference. 1.55 minus 1.35, and that's 0.2. Don't freak out if you get a decimal. That's quite all right. So negative 0.2. We're going down by 0.2. Now let's take a look at over here. We're going from 0 to 3. So that means we're adding, and we're adding 3. So that means we're going to have a change in y of negative 0.2, and then a change in x of positive 3. Now we're going to type that in on the calculator. So negative, let me do it on Desmos, so just bear with me. All right, so I'm just going to show it over here real quick. So we're doing negative 0.2 divided by 3. They give it to us in decimal. We want to show our slopes in fractions. I'm going to flip this, so we get negative 1 over 15. So that means we have a slope of negative 1 over 15. We're going to put that as a fraction. So make sure you type that on the calculator. Change everything to a fraction if you have to. Or you should, sorry. All right, so now we want to get the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is what y equals when x equals 0. So there's our 0. What does y equal? Don't even have to do any math. So 1.55. So that's how you do that. Let's see what else. All right, so now, again, it's asking for the same thing as the last question, slope and y-intercept, except this time we have a graph. So let's start with the y-intercept, the most easiest on a graph. Y-intercept on a graph is where our given diagonal line intersects on the y-axis, which is, this is the y-axis. It's always a vertical line in the center. And it looks like our given line intersects on, we always start at 0, and it goes 1, 2, 2.5. We'll say 2.5. So 2.5. So our y-intercept is 2.5. And it's above the x-axis, so it's going to be positive. If it's anywhere down here, so let's say we had a line that went like this, our y-intercept would be right here, maybe it's where you can see, would be negative 3. So be careful if it's above the x-axis, it's positive. If it's below, it's negative. All right, so let's find the slope. So remember, slope for on a graph is slope is rise divided by run. Rise divided by run. So rise is how many units you move up and down. Run is how many units you move to the left and right. So we always pick 2 pretty points. Ignore this line right here. I just use it as an example. So here's a pretty point. Well, we don't want to use that pretty point. We want to use a pretty point right. Oh, here, they give it to us. There's one right there and one right there. Ignore that. We just added that in. All right, so these are in units of 1. So I'm going to create my right triangle. I go down 1 unit, so that means it's negative 1. So that's our rise. So rise is going up or down. That sounds a little misleading because rise indicates only going up, but rise means going up or down in this sense. So in this case, so we want to get from this point to this point, the 2 points that were given to us. So we went down 1, so that means the negative 1 is going to be our numerator. And then our denominator is picking up from where we left off. We go over 1, 2 to get to our end coordinate point. So we went to the left, or excuse me, went to the right 2, so it's going to be a positive 2. So that means that gives us a slope of negative 1/2. So that's our slope. All right, let's take a look at 7. So you have to be able to look at a graph, a line, and determine which one is proportional and not proportional. So remember, a proportional is a line that goes through origin, or 0, 0. So if the line goes through the origin, you got yourself a proportional relationship. That's all you have to know for the test. So looking at this first one, so you ask yourself, okay, does the given diagonal line go through the middle right here? So right through the middle, right in the intersection of the x and y axis. This is x, this is y, goes right through the middle, so this would be proportional. Bam, that's all you have to know. Taking a look at this one. Here's the origin, 0, 0, right in the center. Does our given line go through it? Nope, not like this one. So this one would be non-proportional. So make sure you just know that for the test. Let's take a look what else is on here. All right, so again, this goes back to make sure you're reading the question, big time reading the question. I know you're looking at this triangle, this right triangle, and you're thinking, oh, Pythagorean theorem, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But in this case, no, what's it asking? It's asking for the slope. It's not asking for the distance of CB right here. It's asking for the slope. It wants to know the steepness, the slope, not the distance. So if you find yourself calculating a squared plus b squared equals c squared on this test, no. Erase it immediately. It's asking for the slope. So that means we are going to set up, it's a graph, so we're going to set up a rise divided by run. So we want to get from point C to point B. And we can only move up, down, left, right. So to get from here to here, we have to go down and then over to the left. So we're only, pretend like this is a line right here. So pretend like this goes on and we're finding the distance, or not the distance, I'm sorry, we're finding the slope with these two pretty points right here. So we found our two pretty points. That's what we're looking for. We're not looking for Pythagorean theorem. So going from here to here, they're in units of 1. We go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So that'd be negative 4. Our rise is negative 4. And then picking up from where we left off, we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Positive 4. So our slope, because that's what the question's asking for, our slope is negative 4 divided by 4, which reduces to just negative 1. All right, so make sure you pay careful attention to that. So you're going to see a problem that looks like this. You're going to have a right triangle, but you're looking for the slope. So you're going to treat it just like you would rise divided by run. No Pythagorean theorem. All right, so in this question, what is the y-intercept? So very easy. We just did this. So you want to, all you're going to do is look at the y-axis and look at the line that's given to you and see where it intersects this line right here. So starting from the origin, it intersects right here. So we got from 0, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes up 4. So your y-intercept is equal to simply 4. That's your answer. So if it were down here, so let's say it's at 1, 2, 3. If it was right here and we had a line going down like that, or up, doesn't matter. So you would start from 0 and go down 1, 2, 3. So in this case, the y-intercept would be negative 3. But this one, it's positive 4 because it's above the x-axis. All right, so this is one of those very directly questions. So what you're going to do is whenever you see that word varies directly, you're going to set up a proportion. So you're going to have two labels, two situations, or two things that we're going to be comparing. So you want to find that first. So let's just read it. The distance of miles in a car will travel. So miles in a car. So we're going to be dealing with miles in a car divided by, varies directly with what? So remember, our label is always on this side and our label is always on this side. With how much gallons of gasoline. So if a car can travel 400 miles and 11 gallons of gasoline, So there's our ratio. That's what we know. So we're going to go ahead and write that in. If the car can travel 400 miles, I'm going to put 400 miles, because remember, I'm going to express any label all on the numerator if that's how I have it set up. And any number that I associate with gallons is going to be all on the bottom. All right, so we have 400 miles on 11 gallons of gas. How far will it travel on 9 gallons of gas? So that means, in separate proportion, I'm going to put the 9 at the bottom because gallons goes in the same row as gallons. And then this is when we cross multiply and divide. So to find out how many miles on 9 gallons based on the information that we know, I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply 400 times 9 and then divide that. Let me get my calculator back out. All right, so 400 times 9, I get 3,600. And then we're going to divide that by 11. And we get roughly 327.3. We'll round to tenths. And since it goes right here, it's on the numerator, it's miles. So that answer is going to be miles. All right, so those are the key concepts you need to know for the test. So make sure you understand those. Pay attention to everything we went over this video, and you should do just fine on the test on Wednesday.